Hi everyone. I want to summarize chapter 3 and 4 of Gordon Neufeld's book, Hold On to Your Kids. Um, and I also want to let you know that there is a Gordon Neufeld video that I posted on Capsy Cranbrook, Parenting Through the Pandemic. It's about an hour long, so you can actually listen to Gordon Neufeld himself instead of just me talking about his book. Um, so Gordon Neufeld says that children are often peer-oriented in our society not because the individual parent is doing something wrong, but actually because there are a lot of changes in our society. There's often financial pressure on families for both parents to go back to work. And childcare professionals haven't always learned about the importance of attachment. So here we're luckier than in the States. We get more maternity time. But when we do have to go back to work, it's really hard to find childcare. So often instead of picking the best childcare there is, that's the best fit for you and your child, you have to just pick whatever you can find. So that can be difficult. As far as school goes, like it used to be that a kindergarten teacher would come and visit the house, which was a great attachment ritual. I don't know if they still do that here. I know they didn't do it when my kids were in school. Um, and in school, teachers are often just taught to teach the subjects and not necessarily about the importance in attachment. I know some of the people in our group are teachers. If you want to comment on that and tell me if things have maybe changed since Gordon Neufeld wrote that book, let me know. I'd be interested. Um, it's also challenging for teachers. Often the classroom sizes are big. And then at lunchtime, most kids stay at lunch. And so lunchtime would be a good time for attachment. Any meal time is not just about eating; it's a time to connect. So if we have less time to connect with each other, that's a challenge. Another attachment void is extended family. Often people move now. It's not like you've always lived in the same town with the same people. When we move, often we're far away from our extended family, and that's a loss to all of us, really. Um, it takes culture to develop over generations and living in the same community. So now, when we move a lot, culture it takes a while to build. So you gotta find your village again in a way. Um, people used to have the same family physician, sometimes over generations. Now it's really hard to find a doctor at all. So people used to know all the shopkeepers. So there is a big village of adults to be attached to for children. We got to make sure that our children's lives are rich in adult attachment and not just rich in peer attachments, or else they're more likely to become peer attached. More marriages end up in divorce now than they're used to. That can be challenging for children to stay attached to both parents at the same time. So it's important that you don't bash the other parent if you are separated. Also, you don't have to make excuses for them. Just be there for your child, and help them through the whole process and everything. And don't put them emotionally in the middle. Just support them emotionally where you can. So when there is a new step parent, sometimes children instinctively reject that person because it feels threatening to the attachment to the actual parent. You can help by not making that a competing attachment, but instead maybe even a supporting attachment. So if the step parent is also supporting the rules that the parent has, and everybody's kind of working together and keeping children as the focus and instead of battling each other, then that's going to be helpful to the children, and it helps them be attached to everybody. Sometimes children turn to become peer attached before the divorce even happens. because parents are busy dealing with their relationship and don't have as much time for their kids, sometimes set up play dates to keep them busy with friends instead. But instead of getting them attached with each other, I mean, a play date, of course, here and there is fine, but if you really don't have time and there is an attachment void that needs to be filled, see if you can fill it with another adult who can be there and be loving and help them. So, like, it can be a grandparent, it can be an aunt, it can be a good friend, like an adult who's nurturing. In two-parent families, oh, and also I want to say about, as far as marriages breaking up, it doesn't mean that kids are better off to stay in a marriage with conflict. That's not the solution. Also, the solution is to have somebody there for the children, to be an attachment figure, whether it can be you throughout that time or whether you have to get somebody to help you out and support you through that time. In two-parent families, there are also challenges. Lots of times both parents have to work, parents have different philosophies or whatever. It would be nice if society would give parents more time to stay home with their kids. In some other countries that's the case, but we got to work with what we have and make sure there are adults in place who are responsible and nurturing and that are there for our kids. Society is changing so rapidly that it doesn't give us time to develop new traditions sometimes. Also, some of our culture is being transmitted electronically. So sometimes the kids are getting their culture from online, and it makes parents often feel out of touch, and it makes grandparents feel totally out of touch. So when a grandparent should be the source of wisdom and, and have a place in the family still that's of high importance, sometimes, like with electronics being so important now, it kind of keeps grandparents out of the loop and makes them feel like less valued or less important. On the other hand, I feel like, during these times right now, technology really helps us to stay connected with our family members. So it can be a really good thing too. It's all in how we use it, right? So Gordon Neufeld went with his family to Provence for a year in France, and there were some things that he really liked that he thought were great customs to foster attachment. One of the things he saw was that children greeted adults and adults greeted children. I think we still do that to a certain extent, but we're kind of a rushed society, so it's just something to keep in mind. Slow down, greet each other, take the time to do it properly. Socialization involved the whole family, so whole family and extended family lots of times, young and old. Also, it was in a small village, so there was only one village activity at a time, so the families weren't pulled in all different directions and everybody could come together. Sunday afternoons were for families to walk in the countryside. That's a nice tradition that, it doesn't cost any money. Don't have to go anywhere fancy, just go for a walk as a family. It's a nice activity for connection. At the village fountain was a place for old and young to get together. It was a meeting place for, chatting. And the festivities included everyone, again, old and young. So he said culture preceded over materialism. He noticed that when he went to a bakery, he had to do some friendly chit-chat first if he wanted to get served. The people working in the bakery found it very rude if he just walked in and asked for what he wanted. Like, that's not polite. You have to say, how are you, blah, 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 make a little bit of small talk, and then ask for what you want to order. So also a nice little reminder to, be connected to people, not just go, go, go. The other thing he observed that he really liked was that the school had a fence around it with a gate. The teacher was at the gate. The parents or grandparents took the kids to the school, handed them over to the teacher. And so it was a nice ritual to pass on the child to the next attachment figure. And it shows the kids, if you're friendly and welcoming and talk to the teacher and stuff, that you have a good relationship. It makes the child feel like it's safe to go see them and be with them. And you're still the compass for them, because you're the one who introduces them to the other relationship. In North America, in our society, he says peer attachments are formed due to an attachment void. So he says there are lots of stories where, an attachment voids get filled by whoever is available. So, like Tarzan gets raised by apes. He said this is how, attachment is very indiscriminatory. So, if there's a void, it's such a need for us as people to be attached, we'll just fill it with whoever comes along. So, that's the danger. So, it's good for you to, if you need a different attachment for your kids, for you to make that introduction, to pick a person that's suitable. Because if you leave an attachment void, they'll pick whoever. And if you're lucky, that's a good person. And if you're not lucky, then it could be just, a fair weather friend who really breaks their heart, who is like, oh, you're my best friend and now I don't want you anymore, kind of thing. So, yeah. He gave an example of like an immigrant family who came from a different culture. For the kids and the whole family, they lost some of their extended family by moving. The parents are often very busy having to make money, and the parents find it hard sometimes with the language and the new culture to feel as confident to be the compass point for their kids. So that can be a scenario where the kids become peer attached, and then it makes it really tricky for the parents to stay in charge, to still be the one guiding them and influencing them and everything, and to keep their traditions. So it's important that you either, keep some traditions going or make some new ones, whatever works for your family. But, be confident as a parent that you're their best bet. And if you are busy, you're working and everything, find somebody that can fill that void, somebody suitable. So yeah, we're in challenging times right now where we can't see a lot of our loved ones. So I'm hoping you all find ways to stay connected with them. So that's the end of chapter 3. And then for chapter 4, Gordon Neufeld starts by talking about a family that came to see him who had challenges. He talks about several families and their different challenges and how they try to address them, often with punishment, because often when we feel like at the end of our rope, we resort to getting more and more harsh because we just don't know what else to do anymore. But that just makes it worse, and then parents feel like totally at the end of the rope. So they went to see Gordon Neufeld, and he said the thing is, parenting should be a lot easier than that. But you have to get back into alignment with your children, like we were talking about last time with the magnet, where you're facing each other and you have that attachment, and instead of your children turning away to somebody else. So you can think about some people that you wanted to behave well for, like maybe a certain relative or a teacher or someone that you wanted their approval, and so you wanted to behave well for them. And then you can think about some people that you didn't want to behave well for, and give it some thought what the difference was, because it can be kind of enlightening for us. I gave the example of a math teacher I had in grade 5 who I loved, and the only time in all of school I had an A in math, and then after that I went downhill drastically. And I thought I was just really bad at math. But it showed what a difference it can make if you're in a good relationship with somebody, how learning becomes easier, and you want to do well for that person. So Yeah, so relationship is very important and fundamental. Um, so Gordon Neufeld says, like the less power we possess, the more likely we raise our voice. I don't think that necessarily means you don't have power all the time. It's just in that moment. It could be just in that moment you're like getting tired. You're at the end of your rope. You don't know what to do anymore. So yeah, the more harsh we become, usually it's not a sign of us being powerful. It's a sign of us losing it. So he says like tips and tricks don't usually help. You know, that kind of parenting advice of count to three or you know, time out or whatever. It works temporarily, but you got to get your power back. You got to work on the relationship and on taking care of yourself so that you do have, you know, a full tank again so you can parent. Um, he says just like power has become a dirty word in society because people abuse their power, but there is such a thing as a good kind of power too. He says dependence has become a dirty word as well. He says we want our children to be self directed, self motivated, self controlled, self orienting, self reliant, and self assured. Those aren't bad things. Like, of course, we want that for our kids eventually. Just realize that that's not going to happen at 5 years old, or you know, it's not going to really truly happen until they're adults. So you got to help them in the meantime. You can work towards independence with them, you know, obviously to feed themselves, to dress themselves, all those things are important for them to know. But as far as like emotionally, they're not going to be independent from you, and hopefully, you know, you're going to be emotionally available to them all their lives. So don't expect independence that way. So we should want our kids to look at us for nurturing, comfort, assistance, love, connection, and belonging. It's important that they look to us for that, because if we don't give it to them, they'll get it somewhere else or try to get it somewhere else, and then they can get really hurt if they try to get that from their peers, because their peers aren't designed to nurture them, um, uh, and to really look out for them in the same way that parents are. Um, so humans are dependent for a long period of time. That's why it's important to be able to transfer attachment to other caregivers. So that's why, you know, it's possible to get attached elsewhere, and that can be a good thing. We need that because you can't always be there for them. Sometimes you're going to need a break. Sometimes, you know, you're going through a hard time or whatever, and then that's okay. You can take that break. You don't always have to be there. You just have to have somebody else to be there for them, somebody that you know is suitable. Um, so he says we've been looking at parenting as if it's a skill set. And if you're having a hard time, you need an expert to give you more skills. And that's a huge industry now. And doesn't really build our confidence. It makes us often feel inadequate as parents, like we're doing something wrong. We don't have the skills. We need to get more skills, but then we try those skills and it doesn't always work. So it's really frustrating. Or there are these contrary pieces of advice, so it's really confusing. So he says instead of focusing on all these skills, think of parenthood above all as a relationship. It's a relationship between you and your child, and that's the foundation and the most important thing as a parent. All the little moments, you know, they're going to happen, and you handle them best you can, but try to preserve your relationship with them throughout it all. Um, So yeah, so it's one thing sometimes we blame ourselves and we look for more skills and all that stuff. Sometimes we blame our kids. We think, okay, they're hard to parent. What's wrong with them? So we don't often think about it as a relationship problem, and most people don't know about peer orientation, so that's not even something that occurs to us that that could be the issue. Sometimes there is something, like a child could be diagnosed with autism or something, and definitely that would have made parenting harder for you. So, and you might have been wondering, like, what is going on here? So, you might sometimes find the solution in going to see a pediatrician and finding out what's going on with your child. He says, regardless whether your child gets diagnosed with something or not, the relationship is still the foundation to help your child through whatever is going on. And, and if they're diagnosed with something, maybe even more, they need you to be there for them and in that relationship way. So even if, your child is now maybe getting medicated for something and it's made parenting easier, don't just count on the medication, be sure you have a strong relationship. A relationship more than just telling them to go get dressed, brush your teeth, eat dinner, Be there for them when they need you. That's the most important thing, and listen to them and all of that. And at the same time, take care of yourself so that you can be there for them. Alrighty. If you have any questions or any feedback, you can post feedback. If you want to discuss something one-on-one, you can contact me one-on-one. And thanks to everybody who was able to join. If you weren't able to join, I always put these summaries and you can share them with whoever you like. Alrighty. Looking forward to next week.